You're now live.
Okay, we are live, so I'm going to call the Senate Finance Committee to order. Committee today and probably for the next 2 days, we're going to continue the discussion we started under commissioners, governor's appointments. We had a member of the public in on Friday who threw out a lot of accusations. And I think we owe it to everyone, including ourselves who were accused, to investigate and find out what the actual story is. I know Faith shared with you a written rebuttal from the department and the commissioner. The witnesses we have today have been recommended to us by the administration. And tomorrow I have asked the commissioner to come in and read that rebuttal into the record. I figure that everyone in Zoom land heard the accusations, so everyone in Zoom land should hear the rebuttal to the accusations. So that's where we are now. And I don't know, witnesses, if you have any order. I think they're just as they come in. I have Chris Campany from the Windham Regional Commission. Chris, are you ready to go first, or?
Sure, I'm happy to, if that's okay with everybody else.
That's, I think, fine. Okay, good.
Okay. So my name is Chris Campany. I'm Executive Director of Windham Regional Commission. And I have interacted with with Commissioner Tierney in my role as Executive Director at Windham Regional, also as the former chair of the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel, in my role as the former president of the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, and we're both members of the Vermont Climate Council. I'm not really familiar with what transpired last week, but I'm happy to share my experience with the commission.
I think sharing your experience would be perfect.
Okay, great. It's been a good interaction, specific engagement with her prior to being commissioner, when she was still staff with the then Public Service Board. I would interact with her as Windham Regional Commission would represent ourselves pro se in Vermont Yankee dockets before the commission, as well as other. Of course, we engaged in other Section 248 and other proceedings, but specifically there when we were getting deep into the testimony. When Act 174 was passed, worked with her on the implementation of Act 174, and especially the development of regional and municipal energy planning standards. In the Department of Public Service provide a support role for the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel. And so when I was chair of that, I think, as I recall, my tenure as the new chair began right about the time that she was coming in as commissioner. And so the INDICAP, as we call it, was a relatively new entity. And so there was a good bit of transition there, both as far as how INDICAP was operating and the support role of the department. Also, during the COVID-19 pandemic, I worked with the commissioner as regional planning commissions. We help work on establishing Wi-Fi hotspots in communities so that people could have free public access to Wi-Fi outside of buildings while they're sitting in their cars. And so we help coordinate work between the Department of Public Service and Vermont Emergency Management. And then we both serve on the Climate Council together. And one of my, I was appointed by the Speaker of the House to represent municipal interests. And one of the things, though, that I'd asked the commissioner to engage in is thinking about how the comprehensive energy plan and work on that might interrelate with work of the Climate Council, both in terms of resources and the requirements of each, recognizing that the CEP was the Comprehensive Energy Plan update, had its own statute, and that the department has its own responsibilities there. And so my engagement with her has been uniformly good. One of the things that I've always appreciated about the commissioner is from the outset, she was very vested in making sure that the public could engage well in whatever the endeavor was that we were talking about. So when it was the Act 174 regional energy planning, she took very seriously the means by which the commissions, the regional planning commissions and municipalities were going to include the public in the deliberations around the regional energy plans and municipal energy plans, but also in the department's own hearings that they were having on those plans. And one of the criteria that really stood out that she always included in the hearings on our respective plans was to what extent was the public involved? What was the nature of that involvement? Who, how many events? What did we do? Same thing with Nuclear Citizens Advisory Panel, wanting to make sure that the public had the means to effectively engage. And I'll also note that when I was on would be before the Public Utility Commissioner Public Service Board on the Vermont Yankee matters, I was typically the only person there without legal counsel. I think after June left, another group began representing itself, but June but also other Public Service Board, Public Utility Commission staff would also do this, including, I would say, Chairman Volz would be very good about giving both guidance and I guess some leeway when it came to my not necessarily understanding what the procedural matters were before the board, as far as, because there would always be the phalanx of attorneys on the other side of the table, and just knowing, frankly, even how to ask the questions of the other witnesses and how to prepare the exhibits and enter that kind of information in. It's a fairly complex and can be a kind of intimidating process. And so even at that level, before she became commissioner, it was a good experience. I've always found the staff of the Public Service Department to be easy to access. I think my staff would say that too, especially the Public Advocacy Division, who we work with the most when we get Section 248 and 248A applications. They've been easy to engage with. They knew, where the lines are as far as, what they could advise and what they, what it wouldn't be appropriate to advise on. Also worked with staff on, as a regional commission, on a number of other things. Like right now we're working with Department of Public Service staff about how the regional planning commissions can and should engage on the update of the Comprehensive Energy Plan, because per Act 174, our plans are to help inform the updated CEP. We worked with staff, like I say, on developing those the standards by which regional plans and town plans are to be evaluated and approved. And just on I don't know, just whether working with them as a group of regional commissions or individually, that's always been a good experience. I've also reached out to them on telecom matters, gotten the information that we needed. They were really easy and quick to work with on the Wi-Fi hotspot questions, about how that might work. Yeah, and so it's been a good experience. One thing that I'll note is I've been impressed with oftentimes, when you have a conversation, especially with a senior policy leader of an agency, they'll begin the conversation with certain assumptions or a certain position. But one of the things I've noticed frequently with the commissioner is when presented with facts, she is certainly open to changing that position. So several times, my argument may not always win the day, but what I find is, especially I notice this, especially when we're working with the nuclear decommissioning panel, maybe coming into a meeting with certain assumptions about what would need to be done, but once she'd hear the facts of the matter, say, okay, well, let's reconsider, and take this approach, which is great, because that doesn't always happen with senior staff and agencies. And the other thing I've noticed too is just, it seems like in Vermont, particularly within the utility sector, and both the within utility sector, and specifically, in both on the public and commercial side, we've had a lot of women emerge as leaders in that sector, and I think that's really important for the state, and I think that's really important to have that leadership capacity in that sector. And June's certainly among those folk, and it's just that it seems like more than other sectors that women leadership has been the case. One last thing I'll address is I think sometimes people get confused, especially the public, and I know working with our towns, it can get confusing working with the Department of Public Service when they've kind of had to function as a stand-in for the Public Utility Commissioner, prior to that, the Public Service Board. And for example, like when Wyndham Regional Commission would hold a seminar for our towns about how to participate in Section 248 proceedings or Section 248A, it's always the department that we have to rely on to come in and make the presentation. And that can get really confusing, especially when the acronym used to be PSB and PSD, and you would hear that in the presentation. But oftentimes, it's the department that kind of almost is the public face of the Public Utility Commission, when that's not what they are. They're definitely separate bodies. But I think it can be challenging for the public to know that sometimes. And the reason I bring this up in relation to the commissioners, that is something I think makes any commissioner's job challenging, is this. And I hope that one day we'll be able to resource and empower the Public Utility Commission to have more of a ombudsman's probably the wrong term, but basically kind of a public outreach component to it, to where it's a little easier if you're especially participating pro se in something, instead of reaching out to the Public Service Department, the Public Advocate Division, to say, how do I file something? How do I do this with the Public Service Board? Having somebody who's just dedicated to that, apart from any particular case in a docket, but just really getting into the procedures, like how do I prepare an exhibit? What does an exhibit look like? What is a prebuttal? What is a rebuttal? The challenging quasi-judicial procedural matters that you have to know about, that you really don't have to know about with Act 250. And I think that's what gets the department in a pickle sometimes, working with the public and with municipalities or people who just don't engage on a regular basis, is this kind of lack of understanding about the role of the Public Service Department, the role of the Public Utility Commission, and who you can ask about what. So while I have a chance to mention that, I just thought I would mention that. That's been my experience over the years, and just wanted to throw that out there. So
I think we've recognized.
I'm happy to answer your questions now or later on, as you prefer.
Any questions right now? Okay, thank you. As we go through, some questions may pop up. Next is Carrick Johnson, from Chief Innovation and Communications Officer at Velco. Where'd you go, Carrick?
Right here. Thank you.
There you are.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll get right to it. Some of my points I think will echo Chris's, excellent points, many of which I'll agree with. I have known June Tierney for over 30 years in her various roles at the department and at the now PUC. First, as she was doing those roles, I myself first met her when I was an advocate for business at Associated Industries of Vermont. And probably one of the biggest items that came up during that, my work there with alongside her and sometimes connecting with her was utility restructuring. You remember that in 1998, and that was a very, yeah, very big deal. And there was a lot of things to engage in on that. That's just one of the issues. And I wish I could remember more. Some of this will be a failure of my memory. So for that, I will apologize. Then I worked at Central Vermont Public Service, so a distribution utility. And among the items that we worked with the department and the PUC was the Peterson Dam relicensing, which was a pretty thorny issue. And there kind of brought in the whole sphere of environmental issues and its intersection with energy policy. And then lastly, it had to do with, in my role and working with June, was at a transmission utility at Velco, where I currently work. And among the projects where we had interaction there was a statewide smart grid project. Oh, by the way, the impact on Velco from GMP's acquisition of Central Vermont Public Service, which had a direct and long-lasting and positive impact on Velco, and a host of regional transmission issues at ISO New England, and probably most specifically, most directly, most recently is the whole issue around broadband and its work and convergence with the utility industry. So if I could, Madam Chair, I'm just going to really touch on, in my view and based on that experience over 30 years, here are just three things I'd like to touch upon what I think are her qualifications to continue to serve as commissioner. One is her character and integrity. I feel compelled to mention that June is an honorably discharged Army veteran. I myself participated in, I guess I should say, honorably discharged from the United States Air Force. And so we have kind of a shared, and that has come up in some of our conversations. And I mention that because to me, that helped shake her unshakable commitment to the rule of law and the fidelity to where the facts lead, which I think I heard Chris mention, and also to an innate understanding of the equally important role of each of the three branches of government, including the legislature. And finally, the immense respect I've seen her demonstrate for the dignity and worth of every individual. I've seen it, I've seen her act that way. One of the things I would mention with regards to her understanding of the rule of law is a position she actually advocated. June came before the Velco Board of Directors. And I honestly think it was the beginning of 20 or I think the pandemic has kind of screwed up the years. But she came and she spoke about some of her frustration with the lack at the regional level of honoring of the state of Vermont as a sovereign entity and its ability to affect change at the regional level, its need for its views, its policies, its laws to be respected and acknowledged and incorporated at the regional level. And it was frustrating. And I really hadn't known that that's where she was going to take her time before her board. Since that time and under her leadership, the department has advocated that at FERC and at some regional gatherings. That concept has taken hold to a much greater extent than it had previously. And in fact, the new chair of FERC, that's one of his identifying what he's acknowledged as something where we need work. The regional transmission organizations, I won't get into the weeds, Madam Chair, but effectively the regional ownership of grid management needs to better integrate and respect the wishes of states and their policies. June is helping to make that happen. To me, that's a big deal. And just one aspect of her character and integrity in terms of understanding how the rule of law could and should work. Let me also talk about her leadership. What I've seen of June in all these experiences is in the building and maintaining her team, June demonstrates the best aspects of servant leadership. I think Chris also noted about the criticality of a woman in this position. I think June brings a different set of skills that she demonstrates that I have seen in evidence in how she manages her staff. I've worked, Madam Chair, with no fewer than 6 commissioners, and I rank her among the best, if not the best, in terms of listening to her staff and honoring their views, incorporating their views, the people on the front lines, her subject matter experts, as to what is the best position to adopt. In public settings, I have observed her act with humility, self-deprecating humor, and with grace, and all for the sake of advancing objectives of her office in service of the larger good for the state of Vermont. I mean, to me, that's a pretty powerful testament to her fitness for the role. One thing that reminded me, one thing I wanted to bring to the committee's attention, Madam Chair, a great example of that was early in the pandemic, it was Commissioner Tierney, I described this as she issued a manifesto, which said, all of you groups, and Chris is smiling, I see, all of us in the energy and beyond, whether you're a communications union district or utility or internet service providers, everybody take note. Take more risks, work together, get this done. This is critical. People are falling behind for health and education. School children are falling behind. And this was back in March when this happened, March or April when this happened, very early before the stories started to appear on what we're reading is accepted as common knowledge now. She's the one that kind of challenged all of us. Get on this and do more. And you'll find a willing, receptive host at the Public Service Department. I can tell you, as someone who seeks to effect change and get people to do something that you either inspire them to change through something or there's pain for change, that was a helpful message to get people to work more closely together to advance the broadband needs for the state of Vermont for all the reasons, Madam Chair, I don't need to repeat to this group. I also know firsthand that June possesses an incredible work ethic and a willingness to do what's necessary to get the job done, which in my judgment sets an appropriately high standard for her team and to meet Vermont taxpayer expectations of their deservedly lofty expectations of people who are public servants. I've seen it, Saturdays, Sundays, weekends, nights, early. I mean, she's working it and she doesn't ask anything of her team that she herself would not do. To me, that's effective leadership. It's demonstrated over the years. Lastly, Madam Chair, I just want to talk about judgment. In all the forums or direct interactions I have had with June, she has consistently demonstrated an ability to develop policy, to advance recommendations, and make judicial determinations in a manner free of personal bias, at least to the degree I can discern. And I think Chris mentioned this. Her temperament and her comportment are measured. You may not agree with every one of her decisions, but each is well reasoned. And as someone, and at least for myself, in my view, as a member of the regulated community, that's all I can really ask for. If you tell me why you arrived at the decision you did, here's where I could have done better. Here's what might have led to a different result, or here's the result that effectively had to be made. The decision had to be made. That's all really I can ask for, is that fair hearing. I don't know about the details about her financial management skills, but I do know the department she leads has been asked to do a heck of a lot more with seemingly yearly decreases in staff and budget. And this is at a time of transformation in the energy industry and its convergence, which was her word, with the telecommunications industry. And that is something we're working directly on with her department and collaborating very closely with, Madam Chair. So in short, in my view, June Tierney is exactly the type of selfless, committed, intelligent, and leader of good character that has more than earned this committee's and the full Senate's strong support. Thank you, Madam Chair, and whether now or later, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carrick. Any questions for Carrick at this time? I am not seeing any. Thank you. Okay. Former Chair Volz, welcome. This is feeling like old home day to some of us.
Yes, it is.
Some of these
I can
people
appreciate that.
used to rent seats in finance.
Yes, lots of us were there many times over the years. But I have not been involved in this for almost 4 years now since I retired. And I have to say, it is kind of fun to be back. I would just want to echo everything that Chris and Carrick said. I thought Carrick in particular laid out June's really strong points. I've worked with her for 20 years. I hired her when I was at the Department of Public Service, and I was the director for public advocacy, and she worked as a staff attorney there. She's one of the best lawyers I've ever worked with, always extremely well prepared and able to represent the public. And she very strongly advocated for the public when she was at the department as a lawyer. Later, when I went to the Public Service Board, I hired her as a hearing officer at the Public Service Board, where she also, I think, did an excellent job um, managing cases there and being a hearing officer and treating all parties very fairly and doing, again, a very thorough job of applying the law and evaluating all the facts that are presented. While I was at the board, we had an opening for the general counsel's position, and I promoted her into that position because of how confident I was that she would do a terrific job. And again, she did an excellent job there. I think she's very highly qualified to be the commissioner of the department. She is an excellent manager and an excellent lawyer. And she has great staff there right now who can really bring a lot to what the department's role in bring a lot to the various roles that the department has, not only for advocacy, but also for writing the telecom plan and the electric plan and the comprehensive energy plan, which is the department's responsibility. So I would strongly recommend that she be confirmed and able to continue to do what I think the good job that she is doing. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I have one. The question of staffing and the adequacy of staffing in the department has come up. In your experience, has it gone down? Could it, are there things they can't do? I know they said point blank, they could not do a comprehensive broadband plan with the staffing they've got. I think we've heard there's like 3 people, including June, that are responsible for broadband. Do you think has the staffing gone down, or is it just that broadband is so new, we may need to think about staffing it up?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I have not been involved with the department itself since 2005. So directly, I mean, and so I'm not that familiar with what staff they have there now and what their staffing needs are. I would certainly take June's recommendation about her needs very seriously. So if she said that she needed more resources, I would certainly, if I were you, I would take that very serious and consider that. I do know that in the history of the department, I was at the department for 20 years, and getting the plans out, no matter who was the commissioner, no matter who was the director of planning, was always a problem. It's a huge task to get those plans done and get them out the door, and they were virtually always late.
Okay. Any questions at this point? Anything? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we've got Ann Manwaring with the non-Irish orange sweater.
Yes. I think it's the English version of the Irish sweater.
Possibly.
Yes. It is quite an honor to be talking amongst the folks that I've heard today speak about Commissioner Tierney. And so I have not known her nearly as long as other folks have, but I will share with you my own work with her. And I am pleased to support the nomination of Commissioner June Tierney for an additional term as Commissioner of the Public Service Department. When I raised my hand in 2019 in a joint select board meeting between Wilmington, the select board on which I served, and our neighboring town of Whitingham to start a working group to bring broadband to some of Vermont's least well-served communities, I had no idea how far we could come in a year. At town meetings a year ago, 5 towns voted to create what is now the Deerfield Valley Communication Union District. We have since grown to 21 towns in 3 counties. Fast forward to our current status, we have issued an RFP to form a public-private partnership to bring world-class broadband service to all homes and businesses in our district, something commercial providers have not done and will likely not do on their own because of limitations of the financial returns available in rural parts of our state. Responses to our RFP are due this Friday. Although our work Throughout our work to bring us to this point, we have been very grateful for the support of the Public Service Department under the leadership of Commissioner Tierney. She has been supportive of the mission of the CUDs as established by the state, including the work of this committee. Her leadership of the department has resulted in an open, creative relationship with the 9 CUDs. She has welcomed us with access to the technology and support functions of her department. And even though sometimes frustrated, we have been grateful for her guiding hand through the due diligence required for the distribution of funding to carry out our work. I understand how difficult it is sometimes for a woman to thrive as head of an agency so technically focused as is the Department of Public Service. So I am pleased that the administration has offered her name and nomination to continue her leadership as its commissioner. I look forward to working with her as we continue to implement Vermont's commitment to extend to all truly high-speed broadband worthy of the 21st century standards. I thank you for your time and also willing to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, we're on to Don Rendell, retired CEO from Vermont Gas. Did I met? Is it Rendell?
Rendell, yes, yes.
Rendell,
I'm-
okay.
yeah, Don Rendell, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon in support of Commissioner Tierney's reconfirmation as the leader of the Department of Public Service. I retired last September as CEO of VGS, a position I took in 2015. I spent 13 years before that as general counsel of Green Mountain Power, and a career before that as a private practice lawyer in Vermont. I started my career as a prosecutor, as an assistant U.S. attorney in Rutland, which will become relevant in some of my comments in a minute. In my roles at VGS and GMP, I had the opportunity to have regular engagement with the department and with its commissioners, 5 of whom I've had the chance to work with over 20 years in the utility business, including June Tierney. I first interacted with June when she worked for Jim at the Department of Public Service as a staff lawyer in the public advocacy department group, and I was representing Green Mountain Power in contested proceedings before the then Public Service Board. We battled hard, June and I, and always with civility, and she distinguished herself, in my view at the time, a view I continue to hold, as really a superior lawyer and a superior advocate on behalf of the department and the public that they serve. In her role as the leader of the Department of Public Service, I had extensive interactions with June on a variety of matters, from rate regulation to infrastructure siting, to energy efficiency implementation, to safety and compliance, renewable energy, customer protection, customer service, and all that goes along with operating a highly regulated utility in Vermont under the jurisdiction of the Public Utilities Commission and the oversight of the Department of Public Service. I would describe Ms. Tierney as a tough and fair regulatory advocate and leader, in much the same way that we all expect prosecutors to be tough and fair. She takes her role very seriously. She demonstrates an incredibly strong work ethic. She holds herself and her team to the highest standards. In our interactions over the time that I served as VGS's leader, we were often unable to agree. That's part of the department's job, to be the public's advocate and voice, to push the utilities that they regulate, to hold us accountable, to take the other side, to look at to look through the lens of what's best for the public. And Ms. Tierney always has been, is still a tenacious advocate. At the same time, as both Chris and Carrick and Ann have emphasized, willing to listen, to have a discussion, to engage on the issues, to have a debate. And all of that demonstrating her commitment to understand the issues, to be informed, and to make her decisions, to craft her positions in a responsible and thoughtful manner, all of which I respected even when I didn't share them. As all the rest of your witnesses today have emphasized, Ms. Tierney has the highest professional and personal integrity. And the DPS, the Department of Public Service, under her leadership, likewise, has demonstrated the highest personal and professional integrity in their dealings with my company and in all of the proceedings in which we were involved, either directly or tangentially. In my view, from where I sit, Ms. Tierney's leadership is guided by some basic foundational principles. What are the department's obligations under the law? What is in the best interests of the Vermonters who depend on the utility services that the department oversees and regulates? What is in the broader public interest? What advances the public good? What is responsible, fair, and consistent regulation? And finally, what will ensure honesty, integrity, and professionalism in all of the department's activities, in their actions, in their advocacy? I believe, and in my experience, I observed that under Ms. Tierney's leadership, the department's work, their positions, Ms. Tierney's own actions consistently were guided by these principles, and for that I have the deepest respect for her work and the job that she's doing. In my humble opinion, Vermont, Governor Scott, this legislature, and the families and businesses that depend on safe, reliable, and affordable utility services are fortunate to be served by a commissioner of Ms. Tierney's caliber, her integrity and her professionalism. And I am pleased to be able to have the opportunity to urge this committee and the legislature to reconfirm her for another term as commissioner of the department. And I'm pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. And I see Thomas Dunn has joined us. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to offer testimony today, and certainly for this particular cause of offering my observations of Commissioner Tierney and for her renomination as Commissioner of the Public Service Department. A little bit of background about me, perhaps not familiar with me. I've been at Velco since 2000. I became president of Velco in 2014. From 1992 until 2000, I worked at the Public Service Department. I was the chief of utilities engineering, and worked at least two commissioners during that time period. So, my perspective is one of having worked at the DPS as well as now working on the regulated side of the industry. I met June first as a staff attorney at the Public Service Department, and then met her through her different roles at what was the PSB, the Public Service Board, now the PUC, and most recently as the Commissioner of the Public Service Department. So I guess if I've got my math correctly, I'm somewhere around 20 years in, I think. And of course, during that time period, I've had many interactions with June. I would say early on, while she was at the department, many of those interactions involved Velco's early construction projects, which some of you may recall were problematic. We created a lot of issues and got some very stern feedback from the regulators and from others. I would say the good news is we learned a lot during that process, and and I consistently interactions with June. That feedback was, while frank, it was constructive, and I would say helpful in helping Velco get better to not only do our job better, but obviously to serve Vermonters better. Over time, as for Velco, as our project execution became better and more routine, I would say the nature of the interactions with June and her various capacities have changed as well, becoming, I would say, more collaborative in nature, while still obviously recognizing our respective roles. Most recently, I would say a lot of work on how we can help Vermont advance energy transformation. Obviously, the department plays a significant role in long range in their energy plans. We have a role there, I would say, in terms of things like promulgating our every 3 years a long range transmission plan, which most recently, will be coming out again later this year. But identifying things like the constraints up in northern Vermont and engaging not only with the Commissioner Tierney, but also with her staff, and trying to find ways to address some of the issues that have come up as a result of the proliferation of lots of generation in northern Vermont and the challenges on the transmission system. Another area of frequent interactions, and I didn't hear Carrick's comments, but I'm sure he addressed, is fiber optics and broadband. Many of you may know that we have a 1,500-mile fiber optic system, and so we have been looking for ways. It's a system that we use to run the grid. It provides grid visibility and lots of things in our world, but we're also looking for ways to use the system to advance the broadband challenge that is very familiar to all of us. Another area that has been a frequent point of collaboration and conversation with the department and staff is on regional efforts. And we use the phrase Team Vermont, particularly as it relates to interactions with ISO New England. And there have been a number of issues during which Velco, the utilities, and the Public Service Department and the Public Utility Commission have collectively advocated for various items. And a couple of items come to mind regarding the amount of credit that ISO New England was giving to energy efficiency, the amount of photovoltaics that were being deployed, and the advocacy involved getting ISO to recognize how quickly those resources were coming online, and that the amount of capacity the region needed to acquire was lower than what they thought it was. And at the end of the day, really what that was about was being able to get the ISO to change their calculations. And what it turns into is saving consumers money. And I thought that was a terrific example of a collaborative effort among the utilities and regulators on doing that. In characterizing my interactions with Commissioner Tierney, I have found her, she's extremely intelligent. She's fair. She's objective. She has, she calls it like she sees it. And I think as someone working for a regulated utility, I think that's, such a welcome approach. And I find that Commissioner Tierney has extensive knowledge of utility, the industries that she oversees, as well as the public policy issues, and very in depth in that. I found her to be a good listener. I think some of my comments are going to be repetitive on what I heard Don just say, but a really good listener, which is very welcome. And one thing that always strikes me is her deep commitment to advancing the department's mission to serve all Vermonters, and promoting the interest of the general public. That is a consistent theme in every interaction that I have had with Commissioner Tierney. And I think that's something I heard Don say. I think he must have plagiarized my comments, but very much a person of high personal and professional integrity. And that is a striking feature. Another aspect for me is in working not only with Commissioner Tierney, but with the entire department. As one of the things that I believe very strongly in is that an organization reflects its leader, and an effective leader establishes a culture within the organization that she leads. And in this case, I think that the Public Service Department has a very strong culture, one that serves Vermonters extremely well. And I believe that's a complete reflection on the work and beliefs of Commissioner Tierney. The other aspect, as I was looking at the Public Service website, and I wanted to refamiliarize myself with Commissioner Tierney's career, but it's a career categorized by professionals, by public service, starting in the Army after college, and then moving here into Vermont and various capacities in state government here in Vermont. And one thing that I think I would ask this committee to consider, that Vermont is incredibly fortunate to have extremely competent people willing to serve in these important roles. And I think that the time particularly in the electric industry, and really as a society, as we deal with climate change and energy transformation, there are so many opportunities and challenges to take on. I feel it's so incredibly important to have someone like June Tierney as the commissioner. So just to summarize, I would urge this committee I would urge this committee to support June's renomination as the Commissioner of Public Service. Thank you, and we're willing to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions now? We've got, I think Chris Campany had to leave for another meeting, but everyone else is here. Are there any questions at this point? I think the one thing I've heard, and I think we're forgetting, is we've been kind of focused on broadband. Mr. Dunn's reference to Velco did bring back some memories, and electric restructuring. I think it's good to remember that there is a lot more to this department's responsibilities than just broadband. I think we've been focused there this year, and I think this has been helpful to remind us to step back and remember how many people were asking to do this job. Senator Hardy, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to thank all of you for coming and testifying today. It's unfortunate that we needed to have you come in and talk to us, but I really appreciate all of your comments and your willingness to come and be on the record with your testimony about the commissioner. I don't remember which one of you said it, but one of you was talking about her actions at the beginning of the pandemic, trying to sort of get everybody to work together to serve Vermonters. And I think it's really important for all of us to remember what a difficult year this has been for so many people. And anybody who's willing to get a bunch of industries together to help our state deserves a lot of credit for that. So just thank you for being here.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator McDonald and then Senator Brock.
Madam Chair, you prefaced this meeting with suggesting that there were accusations that were made last week or earlier. There were many examples given to the committee of things that have not happened that should have happened, and allegations that that some of the responsibilities that the department had were not being fulfilled. And everyone here is either have come before the board as asking requests and are members of the regulated community. And it's not unusual for members of the regulated communities to come in and extol the virtues of the people that regulate them. It's the same difficulty that lawyers have when they're asked to testify on whether judges should be reappointed. I'm perfectly, I'm not perfectly content, but I will listen patiently to witnesses who extol the virtues and the character of the commissioner. And I don't disagree with what's being said. We have specific problems in the build out of broadband that have not been addressed. And some of those are the fault of the legislature and some are not. We've had who is in charge of, give an example, Make Ready. When nonprofits pay utilities to conduct Make Ready work on telephone poles, pay the money in advance to be done by a date certain, and the jobs are not complete, and the nonprofits are unable to get up on profit poles that are owned by investor-owned utilities, something is going wrong. And who's in charge of that and how does it get resolved? I've had folks who've been spoken to me from organizations that are critical and wish that the legislature would put more pressure on to do things. And I say, well, what's the cause of this? And they tell me. And I said, well, come in and tell us that. And they say, we can't come in and criticize the Department of Public Service. They're the ones we have to go to ask for things. So I was hoping that we would hear where the Mr. Whitaker's criticisms and his observations on things that were not happening, were not taking place, and laws were not being discharged, that the witnesses would come in and tell us that Mr. Whitaker was wrong, or that
Senator, let me
yeah.
interrupt. You
so
did
I'm
get that
finished,
in,
so, yeah.
Senator, you did get that in written form. I gather you haven't had a chance to read it.
I've downloaded.
And that will be read into the record tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, there is a written response from the department. Okay, and I thought we did something about that pole attachment last year. The COVID pandemic may have gotten in the way, but I remember we set some
we did,
fines,
Madam Chair.
yeah, okay,
We did, and it took 2 years to get some action on it.
okay, we can get into why at another
Okay.
time.
Yep.
Ms. Manwaring, have you got?
This is a finer point, but I just want to point out that CUDs are not regulated.
And I just would point out that there were 3 witnesses today, myself, Chris Campany, and Ms. Manwaring, who are not regulated entities and came forward and spoke on June's behalf, Ms. Tierney's behalf, without the potential complications that Senator McDonald's referring to.
I wanted to compliment Ms. Manwaring on her pointing out the difficulties that the challenges are for nonprofits to operate in the current world, and the issues of having to go places where nonprofits were unwilling to go. So thank you.
Just again, a finer point, we are not a nonprofit, we are municipalities.
Okay,
I'm familiar with the law. on that.
Okay.
I helped pass.
going to go to Senator Brock.
Well, we've heard a lot of good things about Commissioner Tierney and the work that she's done. We have had our experience over the past 2 years with Commissioner Tierney and the work that she has done and our oversight responsibility of that work. We have certainly heard the criticisms from one source about certain work, and we will weigh that accordingly. But at the same time, our job here is to provide an oversight function and to comment on that function as we go along, and also to review it during this confirmation process. And that's what we're doing. And we're trying to do so fairly without prejudicing the commissioner and the things that she is doing and has done. And I think we all here recognize the difficulty during this COVID period, and also the difficulty that she is in as a member of the administration, having to do some things that may or may not comport with what we in the legislative branch want to see done. And as we digest all of that, we have to arrive at a conclusion. I can tell you, just to ease some concerns on some people's part, that I intend to vote in favor of confirming the commissioner. That said, I have reservations, and those reservations I've conveyed to her and to the rest of the committee of concerns that I have about the department and its performance. That said, though, I am voting to confirm, and let's just clarify that before we go any further.
Okay, thank you. I think that is helpful. Okay, other questions, comments? All right, thank you, everyone, for coming and taking time out of your busy schedules to, I think, help us step back. And we've been totally focused on broadband for a year, and going from having a couple $1,000s a year to play with to having a couple $1 million to play with, and not having any additional staff to help. And it's been challenging, and I think it's good. My hope was that this will allow us to take a deep breath to kind of step back and look at the broader picture. So thank you for helping us do that and reminding me of some of the fun and games we've had in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you
So
for
my
the
stories in
Their
this group.
perspective has been very, very helpful to all of us, I think.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. Faith, I think we can
Thank
go
you.
off
Thank you.
off live.